Well, hey there. Welcome back to this episode of the Dance Business Daily. Today, I'm hanging out with Larry Brewer, and we're going to talk about the power of using dance for good. Check it out. This is Dance Business Daily, a daily podcast where you can always find real talk with real studio owners, where we'll share best practices, success stories, and actionable insights so we can all get a little bit better together. I'm Bryce Conlon, and I'll be your guide. Welcome to the show.
You ready?
Let's get into it. Well, hey there. As I mentioned to you before, dance is, and it's a very common theme on this show, dance is one of those things that we know that we're providing a service of dance, but really you've got time in the classroom to influence young lives. And today I'm hanging out with Larry Brewer, and there's nobody who knows this better than him. Larry, thanks for taking a couple minutes to be with me here on the Dance Business Daily.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so can you start, because you run a very interesting organization. It is a nonprofit dance studio. I would love if you could just give us a high-level overview of the studio and the program that you run.
Well, we're a nonprofit, and our focus is on working with kids from quote unquote underserved communities. However, we have a program that's all inclusive. So we bring kids together from all kinds of economic backgrounds and religious and various backgrounds, and get them to work together so they can kind of learn from each other.
So where did this idea start from? Because I'm always fascinated when when studio owners bring an intentional approach to the work that they're doing, rather than just showing up and saying, we teach dance, we teach ballet, to show up and say, we're going to use this as a tool to create community, connection, social change in the world. Like, what was the inspiration behind that?
Well, it was kind of, I started dancing or formal dancing pretty late. I went into the Marines and got out of the Marine Corps. I was in college, and I went to be in a musical theater production. And that's where I started to realize that, I'd been preparing for dance all my life. What I learned in that experience was that dance was really expensive, first of all. And a lot of people in my position, the way I grew up, could never afford to be taking those kinds of classes. And during this time when I was, just being introduced to formal training and everything like that, I had a lot of people that I guess mentored me. I had a lady, Denise Kennedy. She took me, we took ballet classes in her basement. She had about 3 or 4 kids and myself, I'm a grown man now. And so I'm taking ballet in the basement. And then we started Martha Graham technique in the basement. And once I got to a place where I could go to a studio over in Chicago, she started taking me over there. And all of this was pretty much on her dime. So,
wow.
Right, yes. And so, what she said to me when we first started to do the class thing was, I had powerful legs and, nice feet. I just didn't know what to do with them. So if I would let her, she would show me. And so, by then I had, the bug had bit me, and like I said, I had been dancing since I was a little kid, but it was what we would call street dance. We do competitions and all that stuff. But this was a whole different animal. So anyway, as I progressed through this thing, I kept coming into people where they recognized that I had talent, and they recognized that this was something I really wanted to do. And so whether it was at IU in Bloomington, where I was able to take ballet classes, first I would register, and then on down the line, I would just show up and they'd let me take class. And so it was like that. And so when I got back here, and I came back here because I injured myself. When I got back here, that's what I wanted to do. I knew that the way I got to where I was people taking the time to recognize that I had talent and then cultivating that talent. And so that's how I got to where I got started with this whole thing.
You know what I love about your story? We've had a lot of interesting people on the show because the dance world tends to attract folks from all over and all walks of life, right? But you're a first for us. We've never had um, from the Marine Corps to a dance studio. That's a first for us. So when you got back, you mentioned that a lot of this was your training was due to really the benevolence of others, people who
Mhm,
were able to see talent and cultivate it regardless of your maybe ability to pay for it,
mhm,
and help you along on that journey. When you decided, kind of made the decision, you're a dancer, you're back in northwestern Indiana, right?
mhm,
Um, and you decide, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to open my own studio. I'm going to give to others what has been given to me.
mhm.
How, what was your first step? Like, was it
Well,
that clear that you were going to start a nonprofit, or did you start someplace else?
yeah, well, I was teaching in a performing arts school. Um, and what I realized was that the kids were only getting an hour a day of dance. And these are
Mm.
kids that had aspirations of becoming professional dancers. So I started just staying after school. We would be at school till 8, 9 o'clock at night, for the kids that wanted
Oh,
to stay.
wow.
And so I started doing that. And then, as kids can be, people started realizing that I was staying after school. So they would say that they were staying after school with me, but they weren't. And so I moved the program out of the school uh, over into a place called Gary Artworks. And we started working there. And that's when I actually wrote the proposal for how the program would be structured. And so from the beginning, that proposal was looking to establish two pre-professional programs. One was supposed to be for high school and young adults, and the other one was supposed to be for middle school and elementary. And so the whole idea was to create a program where we could put the children in a place where they were actually experiencing what it would be like to be in a professional company. Have those kinds of responsibilities for coming to rehearsals and, bringing in instructors that had professional experience. And that's where the money came in.
So, so let's talk about this because we've talked just a tiny bit about. I think it was before we started recording the episode about how really what you're focused on and your understanding is coming in and recognizing that yes, we're going to teach you dance, but we're also going to develop the human being inside of you, for lack of a better word.
Absolutely.
It's like character development, and I don't know if
Right.
that's the right word, but that's kind of what's coming
Yeah,
to
yeah.
mind.
It's um, the other part of my early development was that I got a chance to study with all kinds of people, you know, black, white, Indian. Uh, so I got to study with all kinds of people. And what that gave me was an understanding that if we are going to create any kind of harmony in this world, we have to really start focusing on the youth and
Hmm.
get them the opportunity to work with people that are different from them and on a common project. So what we would do is we will have a group of kids working on some choreography, and they're supposed to put that piece together. And it's not supposed to be just one of them; it's supposed to be all of them. And so once they're doing that, and they get into it, and they're almost competing with the next group of kids over here. Uh, you get a situation where they are not focused on the differences. You know, they're focused on the dance. And what we found out is that I have kids that have transferred from affluent schools to our school in Gary because they wanted to dance. They wanted to study dance, and
Interesting.
they worked with kids after school, uh, and so they found out that they had a common goal, and that they liked a lot of the same things. You know, so that was our that was our primary or secondary goal. You know, of course, we wanted to create a situation where kids from the inner city uh, could get the training to send them on to the next level.
So let me ask you, because this is fascinating to me. The idea that it's, again, you packaging up these life skills, because what you just described, collaboration, right? So we're going to bring you together to work with people who are different than you. Um,
Mm-hmm,
there's taking responsibility because we're part of a team, and if you don't
mm-hmm,
carry your weight, then the whole team suffers. There,
absolutely.
these are really big life lessons. And when I talk to most studio owners that I talk to, agree with that. They would say the same thing: is that we're doing, like, we're not really teaching dance. We just teach dance plus all these other life skills, right?
Mm-hmm,
But when I
mm-hmm,
push on that and say, okay, but what is your process for teaching responsibility or collaboration or um, really, these big things, the answer is becomes a little more vague. It's like,
mm-hmm,
well, it's just kind of time in the classroom and it happens naturally. But you've been very intentional about designing that in your system. So for our listeners, other studio owners who may be wanting to level that up and build more leadership within their students and build more connection and build more, um, not harmony, I think is the word that you used. What
mm-hmm.
would you say? Like, how should they begin to think about that process from a very practical way?
It needs to be from the start. Okay,
Mm,
what we have in our application, you know, we have a code of conduct, you know, that talks about respect and all that kind of stuff, and things that you know can get you out. Uh, so it has to, and this is something that the parents and the child, the student, they both have to read it and they both have to sign it. So there's no uh, ambiguity about how you should be carrying yourself, conducting yourself in the studio. Now, honestly, I had one instance over we've been 2001 to where I had to put somebody out for violating the code. Uh, and you know, people thought that because they were good dancers, that they wouldn't be put out, and or that I was just going to put them out for a little while and then bring them back. You know, that didn't happen, and it was painful. But you have to, uh, if you start to make changes in the rules because of somebody's ability or what you think is an asset to your program, then you start to get people that may not have the abilities that this person has to feel like they're somehow being treated differently. So you have to start out from the beginning, let everybody know what you want to do. And then you have to model it. You know, you have to model it with the staff. You have to model it with the administrators, and you know, the quote unquote really good dancers. They have to carry the load. You know, so uh, for us, that has been our model. And again, we don't like we're not, you know. but we expect respect
Mhm.
for everybody, you know, from whether it's staff, whether it's the students. We expect for everybody to be respectful and do their job.
So that's a really interesting thing. So when you start, it's almost like a it's an agreement. It's a,
Hmm.
you know, it's what it sounds like, where it's
Hmm.
at our studio, we X, Y, and Z, right? This
Right.
is how we behave. This is appropriate. This is acceptable, and this is not. And so you
Hmm.
cross the line. Is it like do you guys have like a three strike policy? Is it more relationally driven? How do you
Well,
handle that?
there's some things that we just don't tolerate. You know,
Like what? Like what are some of the things that you don't
well,
tolerate?
the kids, and it was two or three of them. The kids that got put out because they were involved in a gang thing. You
Hmm.
know, uh, you know, they went off to meet another group of people, you know, from another neighborhood or whatever, and they had a row, and they videotaped it.
Mm.
You know, all that kind of thing. And so, of course, it got back to me, and when I looked at it, you know, it was no question because that's one of the things that will get you put out. You know, I mean, that's a no. There's no negotiation, zero tolerance for gang shit. I mean, excuse me.
I love it. You're being real. Bring it.
Yeah, you know, I don't believe that gang activity is something that should be tolerated and that should be seen as a part of the lifestyle of the community or whatever. So for us, uh, if you want to have that kind of lifestyle, then you might want to go to another place because you're not going to get in here.
Fascinating. So as a nonprofit, one of the, because I'm putting myself in the position of our for-profit studios who are
Mm-hmm.
maybe hearing this and thinking to themselves, well, you know, as a nonprofit, you have other sources of revenue, right? There's potentially grants, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got donors, and you know it can come from other places.
Mm-hmm.
As a for-profit business, you have to make your money from your kids, you know, from
Mm-hmm.
them themselves. My question for you is, do you think that you would run your business differently
You
if you
know,
were a for-profit? Like, would you still have that kind of code of conduct?
oh yeah. Um, I'll tell you, I had a friend uh, before I started teaching at the performing arts school and all that stuff. You know, I did some work with him, and I was just fascinated at how well he managed the kids, you know, and how well they responded to what he wanted. And so, uh, what he told me was that if you want your students to respect what you're doing and to listen, then you can't give them tissue paper performances. You need to put them in a position where what they're doing makes them feel important, makes them feel like they're a part of something special. Now, when they feel like they're a part of something special, then they'll be willing to do what it is you're asking them to do. So, as far as when it comes down to being profit or not for profit, I think that our responsibility in working with kids is to have that kind of commitment. Okay, so if you're a for-profit studio that uh, does competition and stuff like that, uh, and you want to win, okay, you can't sacrifice the need to win. You can't compromise the values that you teach the kids, you know, because if you do that, what you're doing is you're creating little antisocial folks that are going to grow up and expect to be receive the same kind of treatment or be able to do the same kind, engage in the same kinds of behavior. So you have to take the initiative. I suspended folks for changing music uh, in the competition, and these were all folks that had won championships. This is when at the school level. I was the Indiana High School Dance Team Association. These are all kids. They came in. They won first, second, and third. The first year we went in the junior solo category. They just were beasts. So the next year they decided that they were going to change the music, since I wasn't there, change the music at a performance we'd set up. So they did this, and the rest of the people, the rest of the kids, didn't know the music had been changed. So they come to a performance and they're telling them what they're going to do. Anyway, I suspended them, right before we were supposed to go to competition. And that's because they did something that would get them fired in the professional world. So why would I allow them to do that just because they are state champions? So there is no, at least to me, there is no justification for putting kids in a place where they will not learn a valuable lesson, So yeah, and one of the kids right now, he's one of the principal dancers for Alvin Ailey, and he was telling me during the pandemic, that's when we had all this time off. He was telling me how they just knew that they were going to come back. I wasn't going to keep them suspended, and he said that was the best lesson that he learned during the time that he was with me.
Wow.
Was because that made him know that as being a professional dancer, that he couldn't do what other people were doing. And he watched them make those kinds of mistakes and be fired, so yeah.
So you're really teaching life, which I appreciate, and you're doing it intentionally by creating systems of accountability where it's this is allowed and tolerated and this is not. And getting people to buy in and agree. And so I love this because we've talked often on this particular show about the importance of creating value-based teams in your studio. And what I'm really hearing you say, and I absolutely love it, is you take it a step further. You're saying, yeah, we have that for our team, from like the staff that runs the studio, in your case, the nonprofit, the instructors and faculty and staff. But you also are requiring students to get on board too. And so you really, truly are building community rather than you're not just teaching dance, you're building community and teaching these kids how to be a part of something larger than themselves.
Right. Absolutely.
Really cool. And that's really practical. Like anybody can apply this, for-profit, nonprofit, anybody can do that. I absolutely love that.
You just have to, you have to be willing to sometimes lose. You have to be willing to sometimes not make a lot of money. You have to be willing to stand up to parents, and that's probably the hardest thing, but you have to be willing to do that, because if you don't, then you're doing a disservice to the people that you say you're trying to help or you're trying to train.
Man, Larry, I absolutely love this. So if you can believe it, we're already like nearing the end of our time together, which is crazy. If folks, clearly you've got a lot of wisdom and experience packed up in that head of yours. If folks wanted to reach out and get connected to you, ask some questions, what's the best way they can learn more about what you're doing?
Well, you can go to our website. I think my my contact information is there. That's southshoredance.org. We're currently rebuilding it, but the information is there, so you can reach me through there. And that's probably it, the best way.
Well, I love it. Well, Larry, I want to say thanks again for just showing up and being willing to share honestly and authentically and with a really
Mhm,
unique perspective on how to use dance as a tool to
mhm.
really, truly intentionally develop these kids into responsible, accountable, well rounded adults. I really, really appreciate you sharing that with us today. Thanks so much.
Mhm. Okay, and you're welcome. Thank you for, again for inviting me.
My pleasure. All right. Well, that's it for this episode of the Dance Business Daily. That was Larry Brewer with South Shore Dance, and really, really valuable stuff in there. I hope that you take what he said and caught the magnitude of specifically take the culture that you're building with your team and extend it to your students. They are capable of growing up into that environment. You have a responsibility as caretakers of the children when the parents are away to steward them well, to grow them up. And Larry's given us some practical advice on how to do that. So well done, and thank you to him. If you want to hear more episodes just like this, more insight, actionable takeaways from dance studio owners just like you can always find us at thedancebusinessdaily.com. And don't forget to subscribe wherever it is you get your podcasts. Talk to you soon.